Okay, let's just jump right into this explainer by confronting a pretty harsh reality, one that honestly hits a little too close to home for most of us at some point. Look around. You'll probably notice that a lot of people are living like, well, like background noise, you know? Heads down, voices perfectly low, just moving completely in sync with the crowd. And look, you might just be smart enough to realize that in seeking out all that comfort, you're actually living someone else's life on mute. Why do we do this? Well, because there's an undeniable safety in numbers, right? Nobody wants to be the ones sticking their neck out. So we have to ask ourselves, are we actively choosing comfort over truth? It's a deeply uncomfortable question, for sure, but it's a trade-off we make almost without even realizing it. As the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche saw it, the harder you try to fit in with the crowd, the more you essentially fade out as an individual. It's like the more the crowd likes you, the less of your actual true self is left over. You get that warm sense of belonging, sure, but the cost? The cost is your own voice. Section 1. The morality of the herd. Okay, so this herd mentality, it's not some weird accident. It functions as a deeply, deeply ingrained system. And here's the kicker. The herd absolutely does not need you to be awake or aware. Honestly, it prefers you aren't. It just needs you to follow along, repeat the same talking points, echo the same feelings, and blindly believe what everybody else believes. Why? Because it's safe. It keeps the status quo humming along. The whole setup is designed to make you behave, literally bypassing the need for you to actually sit down and think for yourself. And the way the herd keeps you trapped, man, it is incredibly seductive. It doesn't force you into a cage, it basically bribes you to walk right into one. It hands you these nice, ready-made answers so you don't have to wrestle with life's messy, big questions. It gives you a script to follow, the modern equivalent of chasing likes and social media approval, along with a perfectly predictable schedule and a really comfortable mask to wear. We love to think of conformity as this conscious choice we make, but actually, scratch that. It's usually just a drift. It happens one tiny compromise at a time, one unspoken rule at a time. You get rewarded with all this immense comfort, but without even noticing, you lose your sharpness, your curiosity, and your unique edge. Now, Nietzsche fought relentlessly against this conformity. Just take a second to absorb his point here. The real madness isn't the lone outsider pacing around in the street. No, the true madness is the massive crowd of people nodding in perfect unison, completely asleep with their eyes wide open. And what's wild is that the larger the herd grows, the more dangerous it becomes to step out of it. When absolutely everyone is moving in one identical direction, simply stopping looks like an act of rebellion. Even just asking a simple question feels like a massive betrayal. Moving on to Section 2, the tightrope walker. To truly grasp just how dangerous and terrifying it is to step out of that crowd, we have to look at this powerful image Nietzsche wrote about in his masterpiece, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He describes a tightrope walker. This guy dares to walk entirely alone, suspended way up high above a gaping crowd. He is literally walking this incredibly thin line between what he was in the past and what he has the potential to become. But what does the crowd do? Do they cheer him on? No way. They mock him. And then a jester jumps up onto the rope and actually causes the walker to fall. This perfectly captures a really harsh truth about human nature. The second you try to rise above the herd, someone is going to try to pull you back down. Not because you're wrong, but simply because your courage makes them feel smaller. Look at the stark contrast we have here. Nietzsche saw immense, profound dignity in that tightrope walker's fall. Why? Because that man actively chose to walk rather than just sleepwalk through someone else's dream. He took the risk, he stepped right into the absolute unknown, even if it led to his own destruction. It's a deeply personal truth for Nietzsche, too. I mean, the guy spent his life being completely rejected by academics and ultimately died alone, but he absolutely flat-out refused to sleepwalk. Which brings us to Section 3, becoming the Ubermensch. If the crowd loves you a little too much, maybe you aren't actually saying anything real. Truth very rarely comes with universal applause. And that brings us directly to Nietzsche's ultimate command: become who you are. Now, that sounds like a catchy, simple little slogan, right? But as we unpack this, we're going to see it as actually one of the hardest things a human being can possibly do in their entire lifetime. So, to become who you truly are, you first have to do the really painful work of admitting who you're not. Second, you have to actively strip away every single borrowed belief, every secondhand opinion, and every identity that was slapped onto you before you even had the maturity to make a choice. And then comes the absolute hardest part, step 3. You got to take off that comfortable mask the herd gave you, stand entirely alone, and simply endure the deep, deep discomfort of the silence that follows. When you do that, oh, things are going to get incredibly loud. You're going to doubt yourself. You will desperately crave the warm comfort of the exact crowd you just walked away from. But you have to sit in that discomfort without flinching. And this right here is the essence of the Ubermensch, or the overman. It's not about having some massively inflated ego. It's about being a person who creates their own values in a world where all the old, given values are just crumbling away. It's the human being who absolutely refuses to ask for permission to live meaningfully. You see glimpses of this, right? Like in the artist who bravely paints what no one understands yet, or the thinker who writes what absolutely no one wants to hear. It's the person who actively chooses the harsh reality of solitude over the warm, fuzzy illusion of fake belonging. Section 4, the price of freedom. Make no mistake about it, the herd will never ask you to be great. They literally only want you to be predictable. Nietzsche didn't believe that life came with some prepackaged, built-in meaning. He believed it was entirely up to you to give it one. And that means your suffering, your hard choices, even your silence, all of it becomes part of your own unique creation, but only once you turn off the autopilot. See, the herd doesn't give you a why, it just gives you a checklist. When you create your own why, you gain this unbelievable strength to endure the really difficult how of walking alone. If you can manage to sit in that terrifying discomfort we were just talking about, something truly magical happens. You begin to actually see through all the noise. You stop needing the validation of people who are essentially asleep themselves. And when that need finally drops away, you start hearing your own true voice again. It's a voice that's probably been buried for years under heavy layers of societal shoulds and musts and, well, this is just how it is. It might be a little quiet at first, but it's real. Thinking for yourself will always, always cost you the easy comfort of the crowd. But I want to leave you with a question to carry with you today as we wrap up this explainer. Is the feeling of belonging to the herd really worth it if the ultimate price you have to pay is your own mind? Because as Nietzsche so powerfully put it, the privilege of finally owning yourself is the only thing in this world truly worth paying for.